Honorable members, the medium-term budget policy statement that we are presenting today is the first of the reconfigured Executive Council of the Gauteng provincial government under the leadership and stewardship of our Honorable Premier, Panyaza Lesufi. As we present this medium-term budget policy statement, we do so fully conscious of the directives that were announced by the Honorable Premier just last month. And for context, the following are the 5 elevated priorities: economic recovery and reconstruction, strengthening the battle against crime, corruption, vandalism, and overcoming lawlessness, changing the living conditions in the townships, informal settlements, and hostels, otherwise known as TISH, prioritization of the health and wellness of the people, and strengthening the capacity of the state. Honorable members, it is important to clarify that these 5 elevated priorities are very well aligned and seek to consolidate the implementation of Growing Gauteng Together 2030 blueprint. In other words, these 5 elevated priorities constitute and represent both a point of convergence and continuity with GGT 2030 priorities. The adjustment budget that we are tabling today is about making permissible amendments, which includes unforeseeable and unavoidable expenditure in the budget of the current financial year, which of course was tabled in March 2022. Put differently, the budget adjustment gives us an opportunity to already be planting the seeds for the medium and long-term funding of the elevated priorities. Honorable members, since the announcement of the 5 elevated priorities, departments have been hard at work, fine-tuning and aligning their 5-year strategic plans and annual performance plans to ensure that these priorities are at the center of their programs and budgets. It is therefore anticipated that the work that these departments are currently doing on 5 elevated priorities will be further articulated comprehensively in the 2023 State of the Province Address and the 2023-2024 Provincial Budget. In other words, the 5 elevated priorities must be fully embedded in the planning and budgeting processes of line function departments. In relation to the above context, it is important to announce that we are repositioning and reconfiguring the budget to embed a new approach that embraces some of the following principles: mainstreaming and elevating gender responsiveness, spatial referencing, and that is tracking and tracing the geography of our spending, especially in the townships, informal settlements, and hostels, as we call it, TISH. Full compliance with the letter and spirit of the Public Finance Management Act, with emphasis on the perennial problems of irregular, unauthorized, wasteful, and fruitless expenditure, including under-expenditure in the province. Value for money, that is ensuring that every cent that we spend creates value for the people. Having outlined the context and core principles of this medium-term budget policy statement, let me now proceed to the important issue of elevating and mainstreaming gender in the budget. Madam Speaker, building on the 1956 historic Women's March, our country has taken significant strides to advance the struggle of gender equality and women empowerment. However, statistics continue to tell us that women and girls are still disproportionately affected by the crisis of poverty, inequality, and discrimination purely based on the gender they were assigned at birth. It is for this reason that on the 27th March 2019, National Cabinet approved the gender-responsive budgeting, monitoring, and evaluation framework. This important policy intervention was adopted to improve our province performance when it comes to the empowerment of women and in achieving gender parity by institutionalizing and mainstreaming gender responsiveness in the planning and budgeting across departments in the province. The Gauteng provincial government has already increased the budget directed towards women empowerment initiatives by 4% year on year, from 46 to 46.2 billion in the 2021-2022 financial year to 48.1 billion in 2022-2023, and this has been followed by a rise in expenditure on related budget items across the province. In this 2022 medium-term budget policy statement, we are committing ourselves to continue in our efforts to drive gender-responsive budgeting and towards ensuring that the fiscal framework contributes to women empowerment. As we present this medium-term budget policy statement, we are deeply conscious of the fact that our country will tomorrow launch the 16 days of activism for no violence against women and children. Honorable members, just last week, I was deeply inspired when I visited the Tsakani Parliamentary Constituency Office. There, in partnership with the Commission for Gender Equality, members of the community have decided to take a stand. They have put together a practical program to address gender-based violence in their community. Of course, working with civil society, law enforcement, and other community-based organizations, they are taking this sketch head on. These residents of our province have established what is called the multi-sectoral roundtable on gender-based violence and femicide. This collective effort will be launched during the 16 days campaign, and of course, we will seek to make sure that we fully support this program. Honorable members, it is through this type of activism that communities working with government can form a united front to fight the scourge. We therefore call on the people of Gauteng to work together to stop gender-based violence and femicide in our homes, in our communities, and our places of work, and everywhere in our society. We must do away with the cultures, the practices, and behaviors that still perpetuate gender inequality and femicide. As the Gauteng provincial government, our efforts to fight gender-based violence and femicide are led by the Department of Community Safety in the capable hands of MEC Mamabolo. We are implementing multi-sectoral plans to fight GBV and build a safe society for women, children, and the LGBTQIA+ community in line with the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide. Madam Speaker, please allow me to outline the principle for spatial referencing in our budget. One which is essentially about building the capacity across Gauteng provincial government departments to direct spending at the smallest geographic location, such as a ward across the province. This approach to budgeting is even more important if we are to realize in monetary terms our strategic goal of focusing on townships, informal settlements, and hostels. In other words, the principle of spatial referencing, or the geography of money, will include infrastructure and non-infrastructure spending to link resources and coordinates to measure appropriate responses, especially in poverty-stricken spaces. Honorable members, we are now ready to outline and share with you the economic outlook that underpins this medium-term budget policy statement. At the outset, and as a matter of emphasis, let us acknowledge the difficult context in which we are presenting this year's budget. It is now common cause that the global economic environment is under severe pressure. In a report titled World Economic Outlook, Countering the Cost of Living Crisis, released just last month, the International Monetary Fund says in both the advanced economies and the emerging markets and developing economies, household purchasing power is being eroded by inflation that has increased more rapidly than the wages, and this has reduced household spending. In response, central banks across the world are increasing interest rates and contracting the money supply faster than expected, which will translate into lower growth rates as the cost of money rises. The global economy is now estimated to grow by 3.2% in 2022 before slowing down to 2.7% in 2023, thus reflecting the downturn in major economies. Right here at home, National Treasury, through the Finance Minister, Honorable Enoch Godongwana, announced during the medium-term budget policy statement last month that our country's economy is estimated to grow by just 1.9% in 2022. Growth for 2023 and 2024 is forecast to be at 1.4% and 1.7% respectively. As a result of this low economic output, our gross domestic product is now 4.5 trillion rands, which is still smaller than what it was in 2019. As a result, we are expected to reach pre-COVID-19 levels only next year. As you may be aware, Statistics SA yesterday released the latest consumer price index, which shows that inflation increased by 7.6% in the month of October. Honorable members, right here in Gauteng, while the global economy and, of course, South Africa's economic and fiscal environment points to a difficult future, we strongly believe that on the positive side, our province possesses unique competitive advantages to grow the economy, to create jobs, and improve the quality of life of the people of our province. Let me just emphasize this point, honorable members, that whilst the world economic situation points to a very difficult way forward, but on the positive side, we believe our province has upside potential and, of course, advantages that can create jobs, grow the economy, and ensure a good quality of life of our people. So where will hope come from? And that's the question we're seeking to deal with. Our competitive advantages include the following: 35% contribution to GDP, which is equivalent to 1.6 trillion rands. Whilst this contribution is much acclaimed, we should caution against basking in its glory or even becoming complacent about it. As you may surely agree, there exist risks that other provinces may reduce our share of national GDP, even if it is by a small margin. It is therefore important that we mobilize all economic players in the province to work together in addressing the structural impediments to growth. Our province also contributes 42% to industrial output and 53% to exports. More than 60% of all freight to our key trading partners as a country departs from and arrive in Gauteng city region, making it the internal hub for freight, logistics, and warehousing. Comparatively speaking, our province boasts state-of-the-art infrastructure such as roads, airports, rail, and premium digital connectivity. We have the most attractive tourist sites, especially those that tell the history of our struggle, most of which are based in the townships. We do have an opportunity to invest resources in these sites, in line with our strategic focus on townships, informal settlements, and hostels, otherwise known as TISH. Gauteng is also home to the most advanced, globally integrated, and stable financial sector that is world-class tertiary institutions and most dynamic automotive sector. Our province is the most populous with 16.1 million people, supported by one of the biggest health systems on the continent. Honorable members, to reposition our province as the destination for investment, we will be working closely with the Department of Economic Development and its entities led by MEC Mutara to make sure that we realize and, of course, get value from these competitive advantages that we have outlined. Let me also say, to this end, I visited the Gauteng Investment Center, which is a one-stop shop for international and local investors to the province. We will be working with the Department of Economic Development to take the province to the world and to bring the world to the province. This is important if we are to retain our position as the preferred destination for investment and as one of the leading economies in the continent. In addition to these competitive advantages, the real potential of Gauteng's economy is in our townships, which I define as our untapped resources. That is why the signing of the Township Economy Development Act into law in April 2022 was such a major milestone for the people of Gauteng. Thank you very much. Honorable members, through the implementation of this act, we are now at a better position to unleash the full untapped potential of the township economy. This will in turn significantly increase Gauteng's share of the national GDP and contribute towards changing the living conditions in townships, informal settlements, and hostels, as correctly envisioned by Premier Lesofie. And I'll come back to this point when I talk about the mandate of creating a state bank in the province. Honorable members, as we continue with our drive to grow the economy, we are also mindful of the fact that we must do so in a responsible manner and protect the poor and the most vulnerable in society from the existential threat of climate change. Our responsibility as governments to protect humanity against climate change was discussed at the United Nations Climate Change Conference, commonly referred to as COP27, which concluded its business in Egypt just last week. As Gauteng, we have an overarching climate change response plan, which seeks to respond to the impacts in a way that capitalizes on particular opportunities for positive change. Specifically, the climate change response outcomes identified in the Gauteng City region relate to ecosystems, the quality of life, disaster risk management, and the green economy. Honorable members, let me now talk about the important work we are doing to stimulate growth and create jobs in our province. One of the biggest challenges facing our country, and of course our province, is youth unemployment. We are very proud and very pleased to report that more than 100,000 young people who have been through the TEPO 1 million program have been placed into job opportunities, enabling them to earn a living. More than 60% of this are young women. We are developing special economic zones to crowd in massive investment, grow the economy, and create jobs for our people. We also use our infrastructure spend to improve the delivery of services to the people. This investment is also used to reverse apartheid spatial planning by building integrated human settlements. A 4.3 billion rands investment has already been secured for the Tshwane Automotive SEZ, Special Economic Zone. It is estimated that once completed, the Tshwane SEZ will generate 20,000 jobs. To date, the project has created 344 permanent jobs and 219 temporary construction jobs. Honorable members, last week, Thursday, I visited the OR Tambo International Airport SEZ to assess the work that has been done on the site. I can therefore confirm that progress has been made on this multi-site development project focusing on different sectors, including jewelry and diamonds, agro-processing, pharmaceuticals, advanced manufacturing, and capital equipment. Honorable members, the expanded public works program has been very instrumental in our province in creating job opportunities and for the poor and the socially excluded people. In the period April 2019 and March 2022, EPWP has generated more than 2 million job opportunities in Gauteng province. Honorable members, the current administration is expanding infrastructure service delivery, which will require us to employ 80,000 people over the next 12 months from Everton, Westbury, Soweto, and Soshanguve to construct residential fill-in units in the townships. You can already see, honorable members, that we are looking at the geography of money. We are following money where it's going in the different spaces in the province. As I said, TIDA has given a major boost to our efforts towards changing fundamentally the structure of our township economy by vigorously promoting local production, the development of SMMEs, cooperatives, and township enterprises. Last month, the Gauteng Enterprise Propeller, the Industrial Development Corporation, SASME Fund, and Standard Bank launched the SMME Crisis Partnership Fund, which immediately made 850 million debt funding available to assist township businesses to rebuild and grow. This is a game changer, and as most township businesses are either unable to access or do not qualify for funding from the formal banking sector. Some of the urgent tasks that the provincial government is implementing in relation to TIDA includes refurbishment and support of 20,000 stores in townships, completion of 7,757 fiber installations to create cloud zones for township use, creation of 13 taxi economy zones. I must emphasize this one, 13 taxi economic zones, which are projected to stimulate the creation of 4,758 jobs. Further support will be given to 9,000 subsistence farmers in upscaling their farms and releasing 10,000 hectares of agricultural land for use by small farmers. Honorable members, let me now deal with our infrastructure delivery program, which is still characterized by continuous under-expenditure on both conditional and equitable share funding and lack of multi-year planning, resulting in the province losing significant opportunity gains derived from infrastructure investments. To address these challenges and ensure that projects are delivered within budget and on time, including in the SEZs, Gauteng Provincial Treasury will subject every project contained in the estimates of capital expenditure to the project readiness matrix or the project readiness lab. Honorable members, infrastructure remains a key policy priority, and modernizing infrastructure project readiness matrix is more than necessary and will address, amongst other things, the following: a rigorous process to assess infrastructure plans and project lists to be submitted to Treasury timely. This will allow adequate time for credible planning. Let me make this point that unrealistic time frames, persisting land issues, especially ownership, appropriateness of the land, land zoning, and services must be resolved before proceeding with projects. All infrastructure departments will have to finalize designs before projects can be put in the list of infrastructure program to be implemented. A move away from lengthy procurement processes so that implementation can commence earnestly is very much important. Simply put, honorable members, and as a matter of emphasis, if departments cannot demonstrate readiness on the implementation of infrastructure, the budget will not be presented for consideration by the House. Because, honorable members, we cannot be a party or be part of returning money to the fiscus or failing to spend the money allocated for infrastructure. We rather not put that budget to the vote so that departments can finalize the issues, and we know this project and the project will proceed, the money will be spent. If a project is not ready, we must not publish it in that booklet called Estimates of Capital Expenditure, because we know that project is a candidate for poor spending. Why put it in the booklet? Honorable members, let me now turn to the 2022 adjustments budget. The main budget tabled on the 9th of March 2022, and I must acknowledge by MEC Mamabolo, amounted to 152.9 billion. Today, this is being adjusted by a net 2.4 billion to make it 155.3 billion rands. The changes to the budget primarily to respond to unforeseen and unavoidable circumstances, as well as realignment of departmental mandates in line with the 5 elevated priorities, are a combination of additions to the provincial equitable share, surrender of funds to the provincial revenue fund, as well as rolling over of unspent funds from 2021-2022 financial year. In respect of additions to the baseline, in the 2022-2023 adjustment budget, Gauteng provincial government departments will be receiving a total of 1.5 billion rands, disaggregated as follows. Economic development, the department will be receiving a total of 60 million, of which 40 million is to fund the costs of diesel, to alleviate the existing electricity supply challenges that are affecting the operations of tenants at the Tshwane Automotive Special Economic Zone. This is an interim measure, whilst the city of Tshwane, and we hope they will do, they must address the bulk electricity infrastructure, because if they don't do so, they are holding back job creation and other important interventions in the project. 20 million will be allocated to the completion of the top structure at the jewelry manufacturing precinct of the OR Tambo International Airport, SEZ. Before I proceed, honorable members, just emphasis, I would like to ask you to visit this site, the precinct in the OR Tambo SEZ, that has, and government has done a good job to attract the private sector. In particular, I'm very much impressed by the capacity of government to attract a gold refinery, to attract one of the best freight and warehousing and storage facility for food processing, diamond processors, and of course, many others like they're already looking at machinery and equipment to support hydrogen, such as fuel cells, and of course, the electrolyzer. It is important to visit that site because that site gives practical meaning to the concept of a developmental state. State interventions and the private sector, which are not in conflict. That dialectic is unfolding in our SEZ. It's a very good place to go. Health, honorable members, it's receiving 1 billion, which is allocated towards offsetting the pressures on the compensation of employees arising from the public sector wage settlement agreement, and 2 million to undertake all needs assessment and scoping of works per facility in preparation for addressing alternative water and energy supply. Education, the department will be receiving an additional 85 million to supplement their infrastructure funding that will realistically be spent by the end of the financial year. Let me repeat, that will be realistically spent by the end of the financial year. Human settlements will receive 100 million, which is being allocated towards the completion of the incomplete infrastructure, and we are very confident that this infrastructure project will be completed and that the money will also be spent. Community safety. Honorable members, the department will be receiving an additional 173 million rands to respond decisively in the battle against crime, corruption, vandalism, and lawlessness in the province, as mandated in the 5 elevated priorities towards the end of the 6th administration. And we are very confident that this money will be well spent to fight crime. These funds will go towards the recruitment and training of peace wardens, tools of trade, procurement of 10 drones, 50 vehicles, and 500,000 panic buttons. We must say to the criminals, their days are numbered. The drone will be moving around. The panic button will be checking them. We are going to give the criminals a run in this province. And we are putting our money right there where we said it must go to in terms of the priorities that have been outlined. So, honorable members, the priorities we are talking about are not something that is still coming. We are already funding them here, these priorities. Siyabangena, Jovic. I can hear the opposition is upset that we're already funding our priorities now. A total of 39 million is allocated towards offsetting the shortfall in the compensation of employees' budget exacerbated by the public sector wage settlement. An infrastructure development department will be receiving an additional 43 million to offset pressures in the goods and services budget, specifically towards legal costs, where it is a defendant in its capacity as implementing agent for Gauteng provincial government infrastructure delivery. On the expanded mandate of Gauteng provincial treasury, honorable members, let me now speak about this very important issue. You will recall that when announcing his priorities, Honorable Premier Lesufi directed provincial treasury to do the following. One, to ensure alternative funding for e-toll debt so that e-tolls are finally a thing of the past. Two, establish a state-owned bank. And three, establish a state-owned pharmaceutical company. Let me take this opportunity to briefly detail progress on the work that we are doing to implement these tasks. Honorable members, with regard to the e-toll debt, as you know, the Minister of Finance, Godongwana, said the following when he delivered the medium-term budget policy statement to Parliament last month, and I quote, "The uncertainty surrounding the Gauteng Freeway Improvement Project continues to have a major negative implication for road construction in the country. We need to move on from the debates of previous years and find solutions to this challenge. To resolve the funding impasse, the Gauteng provincial government has agreed to contribute 30% to settling SANRAL's debt and interest obligations, while national government covers 70%. Gauteng will also cover the cost of maintaining the 201 kilometers and associated interchanges of the roads, and any additional investment in the road will be funded through either the existing electronic toll infrastructure or new toll plazas or any other revenue source within their area of responsibility. Now, honorable members, government proposes to make an initial allocation of 23.7 billion from the national fiscus, which will be disbursed on strict conditions, close quote the minister. The minister's pronouncement has the following implications for the province. Firstly, it is creating a framework to bring to finality the long outstanding e-toll matter and the funding of Gauteng Freeway Improvement Project 2 and 3. Secondly, absorption of the debt on a 70-30 ratio between national and Gauteng provincial government, respectively. From its own resources, Gauteng provincial government has the following obligations or responsibilities: 30% contribution to the e-toll debt, maintaining the GFIP road network, and expanding GFIP 2 and 3. As Gauteng provincial government, we will optimize existing sources of revenue and introduce alternative sources of revenue without burdening further the citizens of the province. Honorable members, the Gauteng provincial government reaffirms the following: its commitment to the repayment of the 30% share of debt amounting to 12.9 billion, demonstrating beyond any reasonable doubt its adherence to the principle of the rule of law and respect for contractual obligations. Considering the absorption of the debt by government and that all countries will not be part of the future Gauteng provincial government revenue generation model. This therefore closes the chapter on e-tolls. I am therefore pleased to report that Premier Lesufi on Monday this week, 21st November 2022, led a delegation of the province and met with the Finance Minister, Godongwana, whom I think we must also thank for hearing the voice of the people of Gauteng. And in that meeting, it included a SANRAL technical team. Honorable members, in this meeting, it was agreed that as part of the implementation of the announcement made by the Minister, national government and Gauteng provincial government will conclude a memorandum of agreement to address the following. The very first one: Gauteng provincial government's proposal of a hybrid model of financing its e-toll and GFIP obligations. This hybrid model is to have multiple funding sources that will come from Gauteng as well as those that are administered by national government. We have also agreed that we will look at spreading the period for the payment of the 30% contribution by Gauteng, and I can tell you our position is that the debt be reasonably spread over a long term, as it was in any way a long-term debt. Maintenance of GFIP 1 roads and network, that will also go into the MOU. Expansion of GFIP 2 and 3 road network. And of course, most importantly, the MOU will also tie the date to switch off the countries so that when you pass there, you don't hear two of the countries on the road. That date is coming. We have also agreed on the repurposing of the countries for purposes of crime fighting, Chovich. All these issues, honorable members, will go in the MOU that we are finalizing with national government. With respect to the introduction of the hybrid funding model that excludes e-tolls, let me emphasize, as Honorable Premier has already said, by wider consultation with the people of Gauteng. It is in this context that we would like to assure residents of Gauteng that we will not compromise our priorities, especially in social services such as health and education. I'm also pleased to announce that in the current financial year and through this adjustment budget, there will be no specific allocation that is required for the repayment of e-tolls. We will make an announcement about a charge to the provincial revenue account to our resources in the budget speech in the next financial year. For this year, we are finalizing the MOU. Honorable members, having explained our approach to e-tolls, let me now proceed to outline our broader provincial revenue raising strategy, which will also cover the hybrid model of funding e-tolls and GFIP in line with the MOU that will be signed. Madam Speaker, as part of our overarching provincial strategy of raising revenue we are alive to the fact that we do so in a difficult economic environment. In this regard, we also believe that Gauteng provincial government departments must explore innovative, creative methods of raising revenue, including leveraging on the private sector investments. The Gauteng provincial government currently estimates to collect 7.2 billion from existing revenue sources as part of our efforts to resource provincial priorities within a challenging environment of slow and uneven recovery from the impact of COVID-19 pandemic. Part of the efforts towards increasing own revenue collection will focus on efficiencies through elimination of loopholes in the collection mechanisms, as well as exploring new revenue sources for the Gauteng provincial government. Honorable members, let me emphasize, in collecting our revenue, there are many leakages in the bucket, and we need to tighten up those. For example, the Road Traffic Management Corporation is sitting with about 1 billion we have established through an investigation we have done that money was we didn't receive it because of inefficiencies in the collection, fraud and corruption, and we will be resolving that issue with the Road Traffic Management Corporation. These are some of the things that we need to make sure we deal with. Every cent meant to be received by government must be received by the public purse. In our revenue strategy, we include, amongst others, looking at new casino regulations, automation of casino license operations, new bookmakers and bingo licenses, online renewal of motor vehicle licenses, vehicle impound facilities, and leasing of vacant land parcels. Other quick wins relate to recovery from fraudulent transactions of the motor vehicle license revenue, as I've already said. Now, honorable members, having reached this point, let me now move to the important work of responding to the mandate of establishing the state-owned bank and the state-owned pharmaceutical company in line with the directive given by our Premier. It is anticipated that the state bank will, amongst others, do the following: integrate small, micro, and medium-sized businesses, that is SMMEs, and unserved individuals in the formal financial sector. With a unique value proposition, it will drive a mission of financial inclusion and security while offering a differentiated value proposition to customers whose needs are not being met by current bank offerings. I'd like to emphasize this point. The bank and TISH, particularly investments in townships, and I want to say that through this bank, we will be able to address an important matter of what is called market failure. And it is not only market failure, honorable members, that we seek to deal with. Also the legacy of colonialism that has deliberately ignored and avoided investments in the townships. So we're not just dealing with market failure, but we're also dealing with a deliberate policy of colonialism of a special type. So through this bank, we must lead the way in investing in townships and make sure that we give townships productive assets so that we can grow the economy. Townships cannot continue to be places where banks and financial institutions treat as risky assets, as places where they see the people in the townships, if they were to borrow their money, they see them as toxic debts that will sit in their balance sheet, and of course, they only see risks in the townships. Now, with this bank, honorable members, we will lead the way in investing in the townships, in informal settlements, and everywhere our people are, and make sure that we even lead the private sector to go into the bank, into the townships, and of course the areas of our people. So this bank is a tool of development, is a tool of intervention in the townships in line with our policies and, of course, the TIDA Act. So I just thought, let me emphasize that we are planting the seed to change the townships, and the bank will lead that way. Now, with respect to the company, on the establishment of the state-owned pharmaceutical company, this company will be a medicines procurement hub and ensure that medical supplies are always available in our healthcare facilities to save lives. This state-owned pharmaceutical company will operate in the healthcare distribution industry, and we want it to have a strong, effective supply chain and distribution processes to ensure that sourcing and delivery of medicines to our healthcare facilities is done securely, efficiently, and on time. As medicines procurement hub, this company must also have adequate storage capacity that meets regulatory and industry standards. Honorable members, I want to also emphasize we cannot have such an important facility strangled in the bureaucracy of health and unable to execute its very important mandate. We need to make sure that we deliver medicine to the people, particularly women, the elderly. People with disability must get medicines in their houses. If food can be delivered to households, so medication can be delivered to the people in this province, right in their houses, and relieve them of the pressure of transport and having to queue at different hospitals the whole day having to buy food. Through this, honorable members, we will deliver medicine and pharmaceutical products to the doorstep of our people. Now that we are mentioning it, the Western Cape is doing it. Jesus Christ. Honorable members, let me also say, as part of the roadmap, we have already tasked a team of Gauteng Provincial Treasury and Gauteng Infrastructure Financing Agency officials to develop sound business cases for these projects. We have also put together a legal team led by 2 senior counsels focusing on each to provide us with a sound legal framework related to this work. And will soon announce the appointment of the advisory panels to ensure support of our work and establishing these entities. Through these panels, we will be able to make sure that we have a robust consultation with the people. Now, moving towards the end, honorable members, the issue of building the capable and developmental state requires us to continue implementing measures aimed at fighting fraud and corruption amongst public servants, business partners, and civil society. This requires a robust governance structure to give strategic direction on acceptable ethical behaviors in Gauteng City region. Having said that, we will also ensure consequence management, particularly where the Auditor General continues to raise repeat and adverse findings and corrective or remedial action are not implemented. The days of operating with impunity are over, and we mean it when we say that. The Gauteng Provincial Treasury is the custodian of the Public Finance Management Act, and we will enforce it to protect the public purse and people's resources. We will also run awareness campaigns on PFMA, which will include accounting officers to ensure that there is compliance with the rules and regulations and that we deal decisively and swiftly with any transgressions. The law must prevail in this province, and Honorable Lesufi has, and our Premier has, put emphasis to that. Turning to local government finances, let me state that one of the most fundamental principles of sound municipal finances and managing a municipal service delivery discourse is within the ambit of tabling a funded municipal budget. In Gauteng, several of our municipalities, especially those that are being led by this side of the table, have not been able to achieve this. And as a remedial measure, we have allowed these institutions to table what we call unfunded budget strategies that will outline how these municipalities will rehabilitate these finances over the municipal medium-term revenue and expenditure framework. Starting with the upcoming table of municipal adjustment budgets and working towards the tablings of the 2023-2024 municipal budgets, Gauteng Provincial Treasury, working with National Treasury and municipalities in the province, will revise and redesign a framework on implementing funded budgets. Honorable members, in conclusion, in these difficult times, we are called upon to be courageous in our conviction, to ensure that the living conditions of the people in our province are improved. As we struggle to make the right choices, choices that must help our province and our people to succeed in life, let us draw inspiration from one of the world's greatest leaders, the late President Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela, who said, "We must always be optimistic. We must always be optimistic." Part of being optimistic, open quote, part of being optimistic is keeping one's head pointed toward the sun, one's feet moving forward. There were many dark moments when my faith in humanity was sorely tested, but I will not and could not give myself up to despair, close quote. As a sub-national government, the Gauteng provincial government will not give up in forging ahead with our principled mission to improve the living conditions of our people. No matter what the difficulties, we will always keep our heads pointed towards the sun and our feet forever moving forward, knowing very well that aluta continua, victory is certain. Honorable members, let me express my thanks to you, Honorable Premier Panyaza Lesufi, who continues to inspire us with his vision of building a developmental state that is capacitated to drive economic development and provide basic services to improve the quality of life in townships, informal settlements, and hostels. Teach. We need to teach you. Teach, Honorable Nell. My colleagues, let me thank my colleagues in the Executive Council for friendship, for support, for teamwork, and being robust in our discussions with a focus on serving the public better. The honorable members of this House, in particular, the Finance Portfolio Committee under the leadership of Honorable Pakstau, and of course, Honorable Sox, for diligent, Honorable Kanyile for diligent oversight of our provincial finances. My thanks goes to Team Treasury, led by the HOD, Ngumisa Mnyani, and of course, CEO of JIFA, Mr. Opasiabi, who worked tirelessly and always with wisdom in managing our finances and supporting departments, entities, and municipalities. To citizens of Gauteng, who give us a mandate to govern and continue to hold us accountable as we implement the plans to use public finances wisely to grow our economy, create jobs, and fight poverty. Thank you very much. Thank you, honorable members. Let me hand over.